Hey everyone, minasama konnichiwa, boku no chanre yokoso. Today I'm here to talk about one of my favorite movies. It's A River Called Titas from 1973 by Ritwik Ghatak. When thinking of non-Bollywood musical Indian movies, most people probably tend to think of Satyajit Ray, and rightfully so. However, one filmmaker that I actually found myself preferring to him is Ritwik Ghatak, who is not as well known, but I think should be. He deals with sort of neo-realist subject matter, but for me, it's his formal qualities that make him stand out. He's so bold with his compositions, editing, and sound design that I think he's a true successor to Orson Welles. He only made a handful of features, of which unfortunately only two are available in high quality prints, as far as I know. One of them is this movie, A River Called Titas, his second to last feature. Being his longest movie, and given the setting, this is his movie that feels the most like an epic. It's about a fishing community on the Titas River in Bangladesh as it evolves, though much of the focus is on a melodramatic tale that could resemble Bollywood. To give the setup, a fisherman named Kishore travels to another community on the other side of the river, where he stumbles into a marriage with a girl named Rajarji, and they conceive a child. En route back to his village, bandits kidnap Rajarji, separating the couple. She escapes and is rescued by another boat, and Kishore goes insane. 10 years later, Rajarji and her son, Ananta, go to Kishore's village to try and find him, even though she never really even got a good look at him before she was kidnapped. She and her son are taken in by Basanti, who in many ways acts as the main character, who we saw earlier in the movie as a child who originally loved Kishore. The plot goes through many twists and turns from there, and the movie works on this basic melodramatic level, but Gatak imbues an elliptical style of storytelling that's anything but basic and rewards careful attention. Firstly, there are many other characters, in fact, a whole community of characters to keep track of, including parents, step parents, uncles, relatives, upper class moneylenders, and all of Basanti's friends. Some play critical roles, like Basanti's mother, who isn't receptive towards her daughter taking care of strangers, and one of Basanti's friends who ends up caring for Ananta. There's another beguiling character, or is it characters, who gets a lot of screen time. A fisherman with a big, fake looking white beard called Uncle Ramprasad, but who after the intermission introduces himself as a merchant named Kader Mian. I literally could not tell you generally if they're the same or different characters, but Gatak was certainly never afraid to bewilder audiences. Indeed, Gatak was never one to be overly concerned with realism, preferring to sacrifice logic for emotional effect. For example, take the scene where Roger G finally discovers her husband, Kishore. Them, her son, and Basanti all go to the river when Kishore decides to pick Roger G up, causing her to faint in his arms. He carries her to a separate section of the beach and puts her down. All of a sudden, a gang of people come and suddenly beat him within an inch of his life. This makes for a dramatic scene afterwards, but who are these people that come from literally out of nowhere and beat him? And why did they beat him? Was it because he was carrying her? I don't know. Also, after the scene, we cut to a crying Basanti still standing seemingly in the same place she was before. So, did she watch that whole scene and do nothing? Like, no cry for help or anything? But that's Gatak's style. He'll do anything for a great cut, or for anything formally bold, which is one of the things I love about him. Speaking of, Gatak is one of the very few directors I know who's so visually exciting that I can watch and enjoy him without really paying too much attention to the story. It's funny, one of his movies I've seen only had subtitles for like half the dialogue, but it almost didn't matter. He always uses really striking compositions with blocking in foreground and background, and will sometimes even have characters actively go into the camera. He uses these kinds of shots pretty much all throughout his movies, but what stands apart in regards to this one is his use of rain, which is just beautifully atmospheric. Taking place near a river, there are so many great shots of rain pouring down on boats and so on that are just riveting. But my favorite use of rain is right before the intermission. The camera is shooting a very low angle shot of people in conversation, while rain is coming down on the lens, making for a strange kind of blurring effect. There's also some documentary footage, the most interesting of which shows a boat race, beautifully showing the sun glistening in the water. This footage is intercut with an intense emotional moment, being one of many examples of brilliant editing. The images I've been showing have hopefully conveyed an idea of just how visually stunning Ghatak is, but you can't get a truly complete sense of his greatness because music and sound design always play a large role in his movies. One great example where everything comes together is in my first favorite scene I'll talk about. Here, Kishore just got blindly married to Rajarji, and they're at their wedding bed at night. Visually, it's at night, so there's lots of darkness. The darkness is completely covering his face, so she can't see what he looks like. He's just some hulking, shadowy figure. She, on the other hand, has pockets of light shining on her face so we can see her emotions. There's also a great shot of the bed in the background with the couple in the foreground. As for sound, we hear singing coming from outside, apparently fellow villagers encouraging them to be intimate. But the most interesting thing is that we hear Rajarji's heavy breathing, really conveying her nerves as the moment is approaching. The breathing gradually gets louder as the camera zooms into her from a long shot to a close up at one point. Soon, the breathing overcomes the music, and we become tense along with her. When he finally grabs her, non diegetic music is added, and he brings her to the bed. Gatak then briefly cuts outside to the girls who are probably singing the chant from earlier. They duck down off screen. Then we cut back to the couple in bed, where we get a swirling camera so we can't see them. And then we cut to the rising sun of the next morning. I love Gatak because he fully utilizes the cinematic form to convey emotions, and this example uses the three pillars of film image, sound, and editing in a jarringly interesting way to create a bold, memorable scene that does just that. For my next favorite scene, one of my favorite aspects about Basanti, the main character, is just how angry she gets in certain situations. She's a caring person, but when she gets angry, it's best to steer clear. But what I love is how justified her anger often is, so it's like she's angry with us. My favorite of these scenes is probably the one where she goes off on her parents, basically arguing for independence. After she's done speaking, she turns towards the camera, heavy breathing in anger as her parents fight in the background. This is the first of such outbursts in the movie, so in some ways it's the most satisfying. Finally, as the river Tidash starts to disappear towards the end, two striking shots indicate this. The first one is the funniest, where these two fishermen throw a net into the water, but perhaps it acts strangely. One of the men jumps in, not expecting the water to be shallow. His surprise is amusing, and then we cut to someone saying, "The river is behaving strangely." But the more dramatic shot happens later. We're on a close up of Basanti, who says, "Look, the river is gone." It then cuts to this shot, and the music instantly stops. It's a stark and bleak vision that carries a lot of dramatic weight. But in the end, what I love about A River Called Titas is how it presents a melodramatic type story in the context of this huge river and the people who live off it, while also being pretty mysterious and complicated as to reward multiple viewings. But just as importantly, this was made with the formal inventiveness and mastery that Ritwik Ghatak is so great at that all film lovers should experience at one point or another. He's one of my favorite directors, and this is one of my 1000 favorite movies. Thanks for watching my video. Goshcho makoto ni arigatou gozaimasu. Have you seen A River Called Titas? Let me know what you think in the comments. I think of all of my favorite movies as friends, and I think of my audience as friends too.